Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for the Replenish Africa Initiative's World Water Day virtual roundtable on achieving sustainable wash for communities in Africa. On behalf of the entire team at Global Water Challenge, the US Water Partnership, and the Global Environment and Technology Foundation, I would like to welcome you to this event. We are privileged to have you all here today to celebrate RAIN, as we call it, and its achievement of reaching over 6 million people with sustainable wash, and to share in reflections about how the program has advanced wash through the power of collective action. I would like to start with a brief introduction for those who may not know me, the Global Environment and Technology Foundation, also known as GETF, and the RAIN platform. I'm Malik Leo Keita, Managing Director for RAIN at GETF, the managing partner of the Coca-Cola Foundation's RAIN program. We are a leading nonprofit organization with a mission to accelerate sustainable development through high-impact partnerships that deliver impact at scale. Since 1988, our programs have helped to improve the lives of over 10 million people in 77 countries through a diverse range of interventions that include WASH, health system strengthening, entrepreneurship, women's empowerment, sustainable agriculture, and climate resilience. Of the 10 million people impacted by our programs, 6 million people have been reached through RAIN, and we are very proud to collaborate with the Coca-Cola Foundation, the Coca-Cola Company and its system of bottlers, and many of you here today on this achievement. Before we begin, I would like to level set our audience on the overall RAIN program, its objectives, and its scale. RAIN was launched in 2010 by the Coca-Cola Foundation and is the largest Pan-African clean water program operating on the continent today. To date, over 120 RAIN projects are bringing safe water, sanitation, hygiene in more than 4,000 communities across 41 African countries. With activities focused on WASH, but also sustainable and efficient use of water and watershed protection, some of the key impact from this collective platform is captured on the slide that you can see here. These achievements have only been possible thanks to a network of over 300 local and international partners, including governments, the private sector, and civil society. Through these partnerships, RAIN has proven to be a continent-wide success story established as an efficient, flexible, and resilient platform to deliver safe and sustainable wash to many of Africa's most underserved and at-risk communities. Today, we are honored to have representatives from several RAIN implementing partner organizations here with us today to share their expert recommendations on approaches and priorities to increase water security and scale up access to sustainable wash solutions. Through our dialogue, we hope to expand the sector's evidence base to strengthen current and future WASH programming, but also to motivate new and further multi-sector partnerships, programming and innovation to meet SDG 6. We will begin with introductory and keynote remarks from the African Ministers' Council on Water, AMCOW, the Coca-Cola Company, and USAID. We will then move to our panel discussion with RAIN implementing partner organizations, followed by 10 minutes of audience questions. Now, just before we begin, a couple of logistical points to keep in mind. We are using the Whova platform today. Please be sure to join via Whova and not Zoom to gain access to networking opportunities and materials that have been uploaded by RAIN partners on their booth. You can also access complete speaker and panelist bios by clicking on the speaker tab and then view profile. Details to access Whova are pasted in the chat box for your convenience. To document the discussion, we also have Pete, a professional illustrator, here with us today. Pete, would you be able to maybe wave or say hi? You can see some illustrations on his, hi, thank you for joining us. Pete will digitally scribe today's session. Throughout the event, we will take a few seconds to see the illustrations that emerge from Pete. We will also share final illustrations following the event. Lastly, throughout the session, our audience will have the opportunity to ask questions to our speakers and panelists via the chat feature to the right-hand side. When you send a question, simply please note who it's directed to, with directed to and the name before the question. And if it's directed to all, just please note that. And when we get to the Q&A, I will do my best to cover as many questions as possible. Now that we covered logistics, let's get to what we're all here for. Our opening speakers today are Dr. Paul Orengo, the Director of Programs at the African Ministers' Council on Water, also known as AMCOW, Mr. Bruno Pietracci, the Coca-Cola Company's President for Africa, and Ms. Maura Berry-Boyle, the Senior Deputy Assistant Administrator, Global Water Coordinator at USAID. As such, I'm pleased to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Paul Orengo, who as AMCOW's Director of Programs, is based in Abuja, Nigeria, where he plays a critical role in setting and executing Africa's water and sanitation sector agenda in close coordination with the African Union. Welcome, Mr. Orengo.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Malik. And a warm welcome to each one of us who have joined this event, as I understand it, to celebrate the World Water Day for 2021. Now, as we know it, the World Water Day is that special day when the world pauses to reflect on the gains being made in achieving water security and safely managed sanitation services. This year specifically, it is a moment for the global community to begin serious conversations on the progress towards achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, especially SDG 6. This event today is therefore an opportunity for me, on behalf of the African ministers responsible for water and sanitation management, to speak to critical issues and connecting threads that needs the attention of each one of us to pause and reflect about. It is an opportunity for me to highlight water-related trends and challenges impeding progress towards the achievement of SDG 6 across the African continent, which includes urbanization, climate change, accurate data collection and usage, addressing sanitation, effective policies, integrated water resources management, budget gap for infrastructure, transboundary cooperation, among others. It is also an opportunity for me to underscore the important role that the private sector can and must play to meaningfully contribute towards SDG 6, such as the Coca-Cola's Replenish Africa initiative RAIN. And perhaps an opportunity for me again to issue a call for collective action and strategic coalitions or partnerships to effectively drive the achievement of SDG 6 in Africa. Now, generally speaking, SDG 6 targets are ambitious and achieving them demands focus and sustained resourcing. Africa must therefore leapfrog to avoid being left behind, especially in a post-COVID environment, and with urgency to address the social inequality and build climate resilient systems. The reality is that hundreds of millions of people today still lack basic water and sanitation services on the continent, and therefore several emerging challenges that threaten progress on SDG 6. For instance, on climate change, African nations are among those most vulnerable. Climate change hits the most vulnerable hardest and contributes to food insecurity, population displacement, and stress on water resources. Climate change also manifests itself primarily through water, and several droughts, sea level rise, melting glaciers, and floods, which comply with climate changes affecting water supply, quality, and quantity. Climate adaptation is therefore critical to achieving SDGs. Failure to adapt to climate change not only puts the realization of SDG 6 at risk, but it also jeopardizes the achievement of most of the SDGs. On the question of urbanization, the explosion of urban populations and the reduction in water quality in cities present yet another clear challenge, because infrastructure and service delivery are not keeping pace with cities' growth to meet the water demand. Addressing urbanization and supporting mandated service providers to do so is urgent, and currently there are nearly about 500 million city dwellers on the continent, at least according to the World Bank report of 2017. And it is projected that these numbers could more than double over the next 25 to 30 years. On sanitation integration, which I will also speak about, poor sanitation often left out in WASH activities constitutes a barrier to achieving SDG 6. Over 395 million people are without basic access to water on the continent, compared to about 704 million people without basic access to sanitation, according to the joint monitoring program of the World Health Organization and UNICEF in 2017. While significant progress has been made throughout the years to improve access to clean water, more efforts are still needed to qualify and improve the quality of access to sanitation across the continent. SDG 6, therefore, cannot be fully met by 2030 without increased investment and emphasis on sanitation. Sanitation is essential not only for achieving SDG 6, but also for improving public health and well-being of millions across Africa, particularly women and girls. Availability of reliable data. As we understand it, access to quality data on the continent is very limited, especially in rural settings. Lack of access to reliable data is yet another burden for the WASH sector, as data plays a central role in identifying gaps in service delivery and planning. Additionally, without strong data-driven insights, the disparity in WASH service investment and management cannot be solved to achieve SDG 6. Improving access to reliable WASH data and improving governments and providing governments with the analytical training and tools to accurately interpret this data will critically improve WASH governance in African countries, and as a result, help build more water resilient communities. On the integrated water resources management, African service providers often struggle to meet the escalating water needs, particularly in urban markets. Water is essential for food and energy production, for the sustainability of our ecosystem, and the socio-economic growth of many countries. As such, unsustainable water supply presents a threat for human survival. It is critical for governments, private sector experts, and nonprofit organizations to act collectively to support water utilities and other service providers at all levels. Accelerating integrated water resources management will help strengthen and improve the sustainability of water services, infrastructure, and systems, reach the most underserved communities, and ultimately achieve universal access to WASH by 2030. And finally, I want to share with the participants a call to action. As an institution that subscribes to the principle of collective action, the African Ministers' Council on Water, AMCOW, firmly encourages strategic partnerships and coalitions to include public-private sector engagement, private-private collaboration, multi-stakeholder efforts around sustainability priorities, among others, which are all essential to achieving universal access to water, sanitation and hygiene, and meeting the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goal. Collective action is therefore critical to achieving SDG 6. It is for this reason that we are delighted to be here with RAIN and other partner experts to encourage further multi-sector partnerships and together resolve the water crisis and meaningfully contribute to the achievement of SDG 6 by 2030. We also encourage other private sector companies to join these efforts to develop similar initiatives that will foster sustainable development in Africa. With those many remarks, I conclude by thanking the Coca-Cola Company for making it rain. The African Ministers' Council on Water, AMCOW, is proud of you, and so is the wider African community. Together, we can change the data and accelerate the progress towards achieving SDG 6 in Africa. Many thanks to the organizers of this event, and a happy belated World Water Day 2021 to all of you. Thank you, asante sana, merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much, Dr. Orengo, for these powerful words. Thank you. I would now like to welcome Mr. Bruno Pietracci, who serves as the Africa president at the Coca-Cola Company, to share his opening remarks. Bruno is based in Johannesburg, South Africa, and has been with the Coca-Cola Company for over 20 years. In his role, he is actively looking to reinforce the Coca-Cola Company's commitment to creating shared opportunities and enhancing the prosperity of communities across the African continent. Over to you, Bruno.
Thank you, Malik. Thank you, Paul. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on which part of the world you are. And I do hope you and your beloved ones are safe and sound in such difficult moments. It's a great honor to be here today speaking of such an important topic. Let me start by thanking the Global Water Challenge, the US Water Partnership, and the GETF for hosting this important forum. Also to our RAIN impact partners, several of whom will have the distinct privilege of hearing from today. We really thank you for the decade-long commitment on our shared journey towards achieving a sustainable wash in Africa. Thanks for your partnership. The Coca-Cola Company is a part of Africa communities, and we recognize that our business is stronger if those communities are strong as well. Our unique footprint and relationships across Africa provide us with opportunities to build health, productive, and more resilient communities, and we keep committed to that for the next decade. As a great example, in 2009, the Coca-Cola Foundation introduced RAIN for two critical reasons. Firstly, to respond to the challenge of nearly 300 million people that lacked water and sanitation access in Africa, and also to contribute to the UN Sustainable Development Goals on clean water and sanitation access, SDG 6, as mentioned before. In a single decade, RAIN has proven to be one of the most important Pan-Africa water access delivery platforms to advance WASH through the power of collective action. Through our vast network of over 300 local and international partners, including national governments and the private sector and civil society, RAIN effectively addresses growing context-driven needs in many Africans' urban and rural underserved and then also at-risk communities. The results are worth noting. In addition to improving clean water access for over 6 million people across the continent, we are proud of having reached almost 4,000 communities in 41 Africa countries. We established water funds to support sustainable watershed management and adaptation to climate change. Across the continent, we have returned water back to nature at a rate faster than what we use. We are also proud to have enabled the empowerment of 400,000 women and youth by creating opportunities for employment, entrepreneurship, and skills generation. This is much needed across the continent. We are enhancing the quality of education by providing more than 1,000 schools with improved WASH. We delivered critical supplies and sanitation to help slow down the spread of COVID-19. So learning and adapting as we face new difficulties. And we built the capacity of 14 utilities in 17 countries across Africa to supply water and cope with rapidly growing water demands. At the same time that we are very proud of what we achieved so far, we are not standing still, and we want to do more. As we look towards the future, our work to help build institutional capability is critical. Africa is experiencing the highest growth in urbanization, with 21 out of the third fastest growing cities in the world, which poses its own challenges in terms of climate change. There is much work to be done with communities and governments to enhance climate change adaptation and help address the challenges that urbanization is and will continue creating across the continent, not only, but particularly to clean water and sanitization. With wash access, climate adaptation and crisis recovery at the core of the Coca-Cola Company's 2030 Global Community Water Strategy, we'll endeavor to scale RAIN's impact to improve water security for millions more on the continent, building upon the learnings and recommendations developed by the platform's success. The ambitious 2030 water security strategy is grounded on our purpose of refreshing the world and making a difference. We plan to prioritize action where it matters the most through rigorous risk and vulnerability assessments on global and local levels. In communities, we'll continue to support safe access to water with a focus on women and girls, while helping societies adapt to the water-related impacts of change. So very happy to hear that we are super aligned with what has been covered by Malik and Paul before. But it's also the time to be humble. We cannot do this alone. Africa water security challenges are quite significant and quite complex, and we invite other companies, national governments, and civil society to work not only to scale up the impact of RAIN, but also to create innovations and other best practices across the continent. While RAIN has met its 2020 targets, we still have a high bar to surpass to deliver against the 2030 goals. So we can expect more. We can expect the Coca-Cola Company and the Coca-Cola Foundation to use its power to mobilize collective resources and to meet Africans' increased needs. Once again, on behalf of the Coca-Cola Company, the Coca-Cola Foundation, and all our African bottling partners across the continent, I want to thank our RAIN managing partner, GETF, and all of our implementing partners for their pioneering and innovation collaboration. I look forward to hearing the experts' insights and recommendations resulting from RAIN so that we can jointly aspire for much more. Once again, I'm honored to be part of this panel and humbled with the challenges ahead of us. Thanks, Malik, for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Bruno, for the powerful words. Really, really appreciated. If we may, now we would like to show quickly the RAIN video that has been put together. Madeleine, would you be able to put that on the screen? Thank you very much.
What is the single most important factor an ecosystem needs to thrive? What about a nation? Communities? People? Simply this. To address the fact that millions of people across the African continent still don't have access to a safe and sustainable source of water, the Coca-Cola Foundation founded the Replenish Africa initiative in 2009. Over the last decade, this initiative forged partnerships with more than 300 government, private sector, and civil society stakeholders, helping 6 million people from 4,000 communities across 41 countries build a more sustainable future for themselves. Our projects contributed to sustainable development by strengthening wash systems, increasing food security, improving health and fighting the spread of infectious diseases such as COVID-19 and Ebola, enhancing education quality, promoting gender equity, and supporting climate resilience. As we celebrate RAIN achieving this significant 6 million people goal, we want to thank our network of partners for their contributions in improving lives, empowering communities, and increasing water security in Africa.
Thank you very much again, Bruno. I'd now like to welcome Maura Berry-Boyle, who serves as the Senior Deputy Assistant Administrator and Interim Global Water Coordinator in USAID's Bureau for Resilience and Food Security. In Maura oversees the implementation of the agency's responsibilities under the US Global Water Strategy. As a career member of the Senior Foreign Service, she's held various leadership positions throughout USAID in Southeast Asia, East Africa, and Afghanistan, and served as Mission Director to Jamaica. She holds an MPA in Public and Nonprofit Management from New York University and began her international career working in Kenya as part of the Peace Corps. Over to Maura.
Great, thank you, Malik, and hi, everyone. And it's really great to be with you today. As introduced, I'm Maura Barry, the Interim USAID Global Water Coordinator and Senior Deputy Assistant Administrator in USAID's Bureau for Resilience and Food Security. So let me start off, of course, by thanking our event hosts, the Coca-Cola Foundation, GATF, and US Water Partnerships. And also I want to thank our distinguished guests from our advocacy, NGO, government, and of course the African Union partners. You know, in preparing for this event, I was reflecting on my first encounter with the challenges of water insecurity as a Peace Corps volunteer in the mid-1980s in Western Kenya, where I lived about 30 kilometers off a tarmac road. And I used to have to pay someone to collect my drinking water from a well that was about a kilometer away. And I really saw firsthand the struggles of the community that I lived in, that they had to access water. And yet, of course, you know, right around the corner from my house was a kiosk that I could buy a Coke. And since then, I've lived and worked in so many places around the world where it's easier to buy a Coke than have access to clean water. And you know, the ingenuity of the Coca-Cola company and coupled with partners like many of you has really been phenomenal. And I'm so delighted really to be part of this celebration today. This World Water Day, we're reflecting on the state of the world that's been altered so much by this pandemic and has stressed water services further than ever before. And also a climate crisis that has resulted in the hottest year on record. And beating the pandemic and addressing the climate crisis are top priorities of the new Biden and Harris administration, both here domestically in the US and abroad. And in line with these priorities, we know that access to water, sanitation, and hygiene services, what we all call WASH, remains essential to the long road that we have for economic recovery. And that said, access to WASH is extremely critical at this very moment. While the pace and progress on vaccine development and distribution has really been historic, and I think we're really proud of our contributions as the US to COVAX, emerging economies, and especially their most vulnerable groups, are disproportionately impacted, as we all know, by this ongoing pandemic. And among these vulnerable groups that are struggling is struggling WASH service providers who are losing income at a time when their services are needed the most. A good example is a survey last year that found 1 in 3 people across 5 sub-Saharan countries face new challenges to accessing water as a result of the pandemic, including struggling to afford water and concerns they had about waiting safety concerns for waiting in line for water. And of course, losing access to water makes hand washing one of the first line of defenses that we have. It makes that extremely difficult. And despite the challenges we're seeing due to the pandemic, they're only a preview, really the tip of the iceberg on what we may be experiencing in the long term due to climate change. In other words, we all know we have a lot of work in this space ahead of us. And I think it's really important that we remember when we talk about the climate crisis, we're actually talking about a water crisis as well. We know that 90% of the disasters arising from climate change are related to water, droughts and floods and water contamination. And right now we have a very narrow moment to pursue action, both here in the US for us and abroad to combat this crisis. You know, in less than 30 years, up to 3 billion more people could face water scarcity. In response, Usaid is partnering with countries to develop climate smart solutions, which include strengthening water security through service delivery and resource management. Solving these compounding interconnected crises, with climate being arguably the largest threat to development and human prosperity, it's of course an extremely tall order, but absolutely necessary for solving so many of our global challenges. And humanitarian and development assistance alone will not be enough. The private sector is a powerful catalyst and innovator for change. But of course, you don't need me to tell you all that. For more than 15 years, the Coca-Cola Company, Foundation, and bottlers have been steadfast partners of Usaid in addressing water stewardship and access across the African continent and beyond. And the not so secret recipe behind this enduring partnership is that it's based on shared values and commitment to a water secure Africa and world. Our Coca-Cola Company and Foundation partners really understand the value of water, and not just as a core ingredient for their business, but also for people and for the planet. The Coca-Cola Company also understands that the suitability of safe drinking water requires more than an investment in infrastructure, but also, of course, investments in professionals and in institutions that keep water systems working for the neediest and the most underserved, while all the while ensuring fresh water is available to all. And together, working together, we're able to bring more problem solvers to the table than we would be able to do on our own. And so we're inviting governments and water utilities, businesses, NGOs, and local communities to join us to illustrate. I wanted to give a couple of examples of what we've been able to achieve together. So I'll highlight a few programs. One, last year through the Water and Development Alliance, what we call WADA, the Coca-Cola Company and Usaid and our partners leveraged our individual strengths to provide access to water and sanitation. One example is working with female farmers in Ghana to promote water conservation practices. And the Alliance also is helping at the same time communities reduce stigmas that are related to menstrual hygiene. And as COVID cases grew there, the partnership quickly shifted to remote training techniques. Another example is in cities across Madagascar, the Alliance pivoted its program to promote hand washing and worked with our utility partners to ensure that water flowed to underserved communities through neighborhood water kiosks. And then lastly, one more example is in the arid regions of Tanzania, we're able to deliver safe and reliable water to rural households, schools, and health facilities through piped water networks using solar technology. And so this approach is building resilience and is providing a renewable source of energy for pumping water and reducing carbon emissions and operating costs that are associated with fossil fuels. So globally, WADA Alliance has impacted more than 750,000 people across 30 countries and improved watershed management of 1 million acres of land. And this made a significant contribution to the Coca-Cola Foundation RAIN initiative. And so I'm really inspired by the work that we've been able to accomplish together to date. And of course, I want to take this opportunity to congratulate our Coca-Cola Foundation partners on the great success that RAIN has achieved that we just got a preview of in the video, where over 6 million people are more water secure. I understand that we just also heard that the Coca-Cola company's commitment to water security is entering a new and really exciting phase with the launch of its new global water strategy for 2030. And they're prioritizing for key regions. And beyond the impact that they've achieved already, the Coca-Cola Company and Foundation have inspired others over the past decade by demonstrating the impact a global company can have when it recognizes that water security for all is just as much a business imperative as a moral imperative, right? So a water secure future is possible with partners like these. So let me just say happy belated World Water Day to everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to participate in today's event. Back over to you, Malik.
Thank you so much, Laura, for the powerful words and messages on the challenges and opportunities to address Africa's water security issues. Thank you also, Bruno and Dr. Orengo. We can do this together, achieve SDG 6 together. Thank you. Now, before we move to the panel, let's please take a few seconds to see what Pete has captured from our keynote speakers thus far. Thank you, Pete. And again, these illustrations will be shared following the event, but just wanted to take a couple seconds to take a look. Thank you. Now it's time to turn it over to our expert panelists. Representing RAIN's 300 trusted partners, we've asked them to share recommendations on approaches and priorities to effectively achieve sustainable WASH for communities in Africa, based on insight gained from their work, as well as their experience working with RAIN. As a reminder, you can ask questions via the chat feature to the right-hand side. When you send a question, please indicate who it's directed to by writing directed to with a name before the question. And if it's all, please simply just note that. I am very pleased to introduce our panelists today, who include Dr. Gitinji Gitahi, Global CEO of AMREF Health Africa, Eden Matimwangi, Kenya Country Program Manager at the Water and Sanitation for the Urban Poor, WASAP, Mohamed Ba, Program Manager, Monitoring and Evaluation at the Sierra Leone Water Resource Ministry, Kelly Alexander, Senior Technical Advisor for Water at CARE, and Fred Kihara, Africa Water Funds Director at the Nature Conservancy. I want to thank you all for joining us today. Our first question, comprising 3 parts, is for all of you. In 2 minutes, please introduce yourself, your organization, and your role. Describe your organization's partnership with RAIN and its impact. And finally, if you could fly a banner message around the world on an airplane and everyone could see it, what would be the one key insight or call to action you would share to scale up access to WASH on the continent in order to meet SDG 6? With that, I would like to please invite Dr. Gitinji to start. Dr. Gitinji, over to you.
Thank you very much, Malik. And I know I have only 2 minutes, but I would like to take the advantage of that 2 minutes to thank RAIN, Coca-Cola, and also GETF for this great initiative. I want to start by saying that from my studies of human capital and health, RAIN brings brain, because children who are well-fed and well-nourished and good hygiene and have water when they are young actually develop good brain capacity, cognitive capacity that allows them to go to school and have quality education. So I would like to say RAIN is bringing brain. The next thing I would like to say is to thank obviously the speakers, Orengo, Bruno, Maura, and of course you, Malik, for all the comments. AMREF Health Africa has been working in the continent of Africa for the last 63 years. So it's gray-haired and wise. We've been around the continent, started out as an indigenous African organization, truly believing that the interface to bringing communities to lasting health change happens at the community level, at the household level, and doesn't happen at the health facility. And when it happens there, it is all about community empowerment, especially for women and girls. It's all about water, sanitation, hygiene, and good nutrition. It's all about empowerment and agency for girls. It is all these things put together for community empowerment and engagement. We've been doing that over 35 countries in Africa, and we continue to do so at many entry points, and water and sanitation is a critical entry point. So this particular project and how AMREF came into it is because of our work, where we reach over 12 million people across the continent every year, and we have about 1,500 staff who are based in the communities working with community health workers, and save lives and unlock the economic potential of those communities. We partnered with the Coca-Cola Africa Foundation and of course GETF to run the $4.2 million Replenish Africa initiative all the way from 2017. And our target was 4 countries: Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda. This program had key focus areas. One, it was how could we increase access to water to these communities? Secondly, how could we increase access to safe sanitation and hygiene? And this put together would in turn focus on the last focus area, which was to increase livelihood opportunities for women and youth. And this program has been built on that core belief that access to water, sanitation, and sound management of freshwater ecosystems and all those can actually bring economic prosperity. So this is what I would like to say, and maybe I'll share the results later. Thank you very much, Malik, and back to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gitinji. Very much appreciated. I would now like to turn it over to Fred Kihara at the Nature Conservancy.
Thank you very much, Malik. And again, I would like to appreciate, just like my predecessor, there are all those people who've made time to celebrate with us the World Water Day. It's a great opportunity for all of us to come together and remember. So thank you very much. My name's Fred Kihara, and now 9 years in the Nature Conservancy. As the Nature Conservancy, we are a global conservation organization that's probably almost the same age as AMREF. About 4,000 of us around the world working to protect, to conserve land and water on which our life depends. And we are very proud that the way we actually came to interaction with rain is that the Nature Conservancy was, I would say today, lucky, then was a big challenge, invited by cities that had outgrown their water supply. And they were having deficits, yet they had already invested in cities and they needed a solution. So back in 2000, the Nature Conservancy worked with cities, allowed Latin America, and received lots of support from Coca-Cola bottling companies and entities like FEMSA to craft a solution how the people who live downstream in the city could work together with those who live upslope in the watersheds to check what it is that those people could do to fix the challenges allowed water supply. Make sure that the rivers flow full and they at least flow throughout the year, that there is less erosion and sedimentation, soil going to the river. It's cheaper to supply water to urban centers and to business. And what does it take in terms of an ecosystem service program for those communities to remain engaged and do it? So that's where we got into. Later on now, we have 43 such waterfalls around the world. Lots of them still have the flag of Coca-Cola and GTF now and rain, and I'll talk a little bit about that. You asked me about a question, what would I really want to tell the world at the beginning? And given where we work and the impacts we've seen since 2000, I would say there's no water security without ecological security. Both of them go hand in hand. Let's work to make sure that water is dependent by what happens out there in nature. We can get it done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fred. Thank you. Now I would like to turn it over to Eden Matimwangi at WhatsApp. Eden, over to you.
Thank you very much for affording me this opportunity to talk about WhatsApp, and happy belated World Water Day to everyone. My name is Eden Mati. I'm the country program manager for WhatsApp in Kenya. And WhatsApp has been in operation since 2005. And we've been supporting city authorities in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia to build sustainable and equitable cities. So since cities will be the future habitat for many developing countries, it is critical that investment in basic services and infrastructure, such as what has been achieved under the RAIN program, is put into consideration. So our RAIN partnership with, our WhatsApp RAIN partnership has mainly focused on the low-income consumer segment across 5 countries in Africa, and we worked in 12 cities. So we've had impact in 12 cities. Our interventions have helped transform lives of people who live in these 12 cities, basically through increasing water access through water networks, and also increasing access to sanitation in these areas. And by that, we have reached a total of 1.46 million, specifically through the RAIN support and support from Coca-Cola. Out of this, 1.2 million people have directly benefited from improved water access. We've been big on water, on women empowerment. So empowering over 6,000 women economically through employment, training, and business skills development. We have seen a greater ability in the utilities and the service providers within these 12 cities to serve marginalized residents with greater capacity. We would like to champion for stronger service providers, since they're the ones who sustain water and sanitation services to this low-income consumer segment. And it's a call for us to embrace a systemic utility strengthening approach as we seek to work through service providers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eden. And yes, we are nearly at 1.5 million people impacted with WhatsApp. I believe that once the ongoing Madagascar program is complete, we will be there. Thank you so much again. I would now like to turn it over to Kelly Alexander at CARE. Kelly, over to you.
Thanks, Malik. Greetings, everyone. I'm Kelly Alexander. I work with CARE at the Water Plus team within the Food and Water Systems unit. So I work with teams all over the world, much as most of everyone that we've already heard from today. And clearly in 2020, this number increased drastically due to our response and our prep work for COVID prevention activities. But generally, I work with about 8 or 12 countries closely, their country programs, to design activities, work on monitoring frameworks, integrate learnings, failures, and successes from one country program to another. And then I also work specifically with our water teams around the world to improve the integration of women and revise how they interpret methods or approaches that are women or girl friendly. CARE has been a partner with RAIN since 2008. We've worked with RAIN to increase access to washing communities and schools and health facilities, and specifically, of course, to increase the number of women involved, but more importantly, increase in the role of women involved in WASH in terms of valuable participation. So recently in our Water Smart Agriculture program, which Maura Berry mentioned in Ghana that we do, we also do it in Malawi, but the one that we did closely with RAIN in Mali, which just ended, we worked with smallholder women farmers on improving agriculture practices to increase their yield, of course, but also at the same time using less water. One of the awesome statistics that came out of that Mali project was that a number of women said, hey, I used to have to go and fetch water and water my field every day in order for things to, grow and to thrive. But now with these new practices that I've adopted and learned about, I only have to fetch water every other day. This might not seem like a huge thing, but yield increased, time poverty for these women increased. So we were really excited about that. And then to go to Malik's question about, what would I share? A key recommendation is that, we need to seek the input of women and girls on our projects before, during, and after. And of course, seeking their involvement in multiple ways, not just because they're the water collectors or because they're the domestic goddess or because they're responsible for family hygiene in most cases, but because they're half the population, right? They're half the community. They have the right to contribute, and we'll all benefit from the contributions and perspectives and intellect of women. And just a side note, the menstrual hygiene work, the research that we've done with women farmers in rural Malawi and Ghana showed us that at least 30% of women experience an inability to work on their farms or to do income generation or complete routine activities monthly during their menstruation. So it's something that we should always be keeping in mind when we're doing a development project.
That's a very good insight. Thank you so much, Kelly. Quite a big stat indeed. We appreciate you. Thank you. I would now like to turn it over to Mohamed Ba at the Water Resource Ministry of Sierra Leone. Mohamed, over to you.
Thank you very much, Malik. I want to join colleague to really thank the RAIN to really bring all partners around for us to share what we experience in partnership with RAIN and Jeff. My name is Mohamed Ba. I'm the head of the monitoring and evaluation in the Ministry of Water Resources. I joined the water sector in Sierra Leone in 2013. And my role is to really track the progress of the water sector in my country. As a government, we are responsible to really provide affordable and safe drinking water to the people of Sierra Leone. And we work with the various partners to support the country in achieving our target. For the past 2 years, we got a contact with the RAIN. When we are in the hard difficulties, we had the mudslides in 2017, and the RAIN through Jeff, they contacted the ministry to really support the country in terms of providing a safe drinking water to the people that are affected during the mudslides. And that was the initial point. And they supported the country in really providing a safe drinking water and also affordable sanitation facilities. And I'm so happy to inform you that even the implementing partner is part of the webinar. That is the SLAV, is a civil society organization that implemented that project. Because as a ministry, we are there to really provide the enabling environment to make sure that things are being achieved. And we also got a support from RAIN to really implement a project looking at how we protect our catchment, how we establish what we call a water fund. So through the RAIN project, we got a funding to support to really get our catchment through the Freetown municipality, which is the capital city of Sierra Leone. And the Catholic Relief Services is really implementing that project for us to establish a water fund that will protect catchment, because one of our biggest threats in Sierra Leone is climate change and how that would be is really affecting the water provision in the country. So far, for now, we are implementing that project. And moving forward, we got a biggest challenge in the country in terms of what to really see what we have done in terms of tracking progress, in terms of addressing the issues of our policies and what are the challenges. So as a unit responsible to do that, we also got a support from the Global Challenge through RAIN for us to really do an insight training, data analysis on what we have collected so far. Because in 2012, we collected a huge water point data and we don't have use of it because we don't have the expertise. And also in 2016, we collected a huge water point mapping, which we map about 31,374 water points, but we don't have the technology, we don't have the know-how to really use that data for us to inform the stakeholders. So we partner with RAIN and we got the support and we train our district staff, we train our mapping officers on how to use the tools to really predict on where to construct a water point and which water points will likely break in the shorter terms. And that will address the issue of coverage. That will address the issue of equity. That will address the issue of taking the issue without evidence. Because in the past, the country is just taking a decision based on fact. But now, as a country, we are so boastful that whatever we are doing it based on evidence, based on best practice to really guide our policymakers, to really guide our councils, say that before you construct a water point at this particular point, it's better to do it at this area to reach more people, because the essence is for you to reach more people. And this will help us to achieve the SDG. If we do things in just haphazardly, because these people voted for us without based on evidence, it will be very difficult for us to achieve SDG. So basically, this is how we partner with RAIN and Jeff to really support the country in achieving our mission. So as a government, we really appreciate so far RAIN and Jeff, GWC, to really support us in moving forward in what we as a government are doing. So as an action, a key action, as Malik say, we believe as the AMCAL rep was saying, we need to work together to achieve the SDG. But we can only achieve the SDG if we strengthen our data collection and the use of data. We can't achieve the SDG if we don't strengthen the data collection and data use. So I want to employ everybody that we need to strengthen the data use all Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. And thank you to all for the introduction and the very valuable insights and initial calls to action. I just want to make a quick time check because I think I'm getting messages from our team that we are running a little over the schedule. So I just want to say we appreciate you. And maybe for the next set of questions, please, I encourage you, try to be as concise as possible. Don't want to cut you short, but just to make sure that we have enough time to go through everyone with a set of questions. And with that, I would now like to turn over to Dr. Gitinji, come back to you. Dr. Gitinji, can you please tell us about AMREF's collaborative experience with local governments across Africa? And are there particular insights or highlights that you can share from the RAIN project?
Yeah, yes, Malik, and I think it's, I would like to share, number one, on the RAIN project, as I said, we have worked a lot on WASH, and I will share a few country examples very briefly. But on the RAIN project, we've actually had over 48,000 people gain full access to improved water services. That is around 10,000 households or so if you just use to convert. Over 500,000 gained access to improved sanitation, and 11,000 youth, women and men gained economic empowerment through improved agriculture, livestock production, recycling of waste. All these areas were huge successes. But at a continental and different country level, I would like to share that more recently, we did hold a conference called the Africa Health Agenda International Conference. We had over 3,000 delegates, and within that, there was actually a one parallel session that was dealing with WASH and economic empowerment of women and girls. And out of this session, it was noted that improved water, sanitation, and hygiene remains one of the most important interventions in attainment of universal health coverage and women economic empowerment. That was the key takeout of that session. In terms of our examples of the work that we've done, if you look specifically at the work we do with governments, our role is to co-create, co-develop, and co-invest in innovative, sustainable, and financially inclusive WASH solutions. We don't believe in WASH, in WASH projects without government and without sustainability. An example, if you look at Kenya, we've made governments, counter governments, Kitui government in Kenya, Benshangu government in Ethiopia, co-invest over $200,000 in water project development that we have done. Another example is Tanzania, where in Tanzania, managing solid waste separation, we've achieved over 80,000 of solid waste separation increase, and also increase of monthly revenue collection from this solid waste management of about 150,000 among women entrepreneur groups. That is significant. In Uganda, where we're using something called the diamond model, where we look at partnerships like household on one corner, financial institutions, businesses and governments in the other corner, that has resulted in over 90,000 people having access to basic sanitation facilities. And most importantly, Malik, 15,000 household heads have invested over $500 in the construction of basic latrines within a year. That's almost $7 million actually coming out from the community. So I'd like to just give those examples there and leave those with you and say that WASH is at the center of achievement of UHC.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gitinji, for these great insights. One thing I would love to follow up with you on actually is on the co-investment from governments. What advice would you give to ensure that commitment and that co-investment from government along with NGO and private sector interventions? That's, you highlighted, I believe, Kitui, where the government co-invested $200,000. What could you share with us, like in terms of best practices to make sure that you get that co-investment, that engagement?
So the biggest success factor is co-creating with government. That's the biggest success factor. That's number one. Factor number two is going local government. It is much easier to get local government co-investing than national government. So those are the two factors I would like to share that are critical. And I think I would like to stop there so that I don't dilute them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gitinji. I appreciate it. I would now like to turn it over to Eden. At What's Up, Eden, could you please tell us how rapid urbanization impact water utilities' ability to provide basic and sustained water services to communities in major cities? If there are any replicable learnings that you can share specifically from our highly successful collaboration, in Kenya or Madagascar or other countries, Ghana, Mozambique or Zambia, appreciate it. Over to you.
Yes, so I think the statistics right now are that between 2010 and 2050, the urban populations in sub-Saharan Africa will almost double. So the biggest challenges that utilities have faced is how to manage, first of all, to increase access to the growing populations, and secondly, how to safely manage water that has been given to this or been conveyed to these areas. So there's a very big challenge, especially on the sanitation front, where utilities are grappling across various countries that we have seen over the past. So for example, in Kenya, the number of residents without safely managed water is over 50% as at 2020. So so water utilities, as you've seen, with this increasing rapid urbanization in our countries, are faced with an almost impossible situation. So first, because they need to fulfill their responsibilities and serve all the urban residents with water. And secondly, there's the bigger challenge of operations that we have witnessed more so during the pandemic, where utilities in many countries like Ghana and Kenya were under instruction to provide free water to people in low-income areas. So this has been a political issue, and water is always a political issue in our countries. And this usually has undermined the utilities' ability to, have a solid revenue base that can cover operational costs and effectively enable them to have effective service delivery in the urban areas. I will also mention the issue of climate change. And with the rapid urbanization, we have so many settlements, informal settlements sprouting up in a very haphazard manner and unplanned, and also putting a lot of stresses on the land use values where these are sprouting up. And we've had cases of, such horrible impacts of say cyclones in Maputo and in Beira, where the informal settlements were really impacted. So for us, it's a call for governments, local governments, and also utilities to get as much support, leverage investments from as many partners as possible from the public sector, as well as from the private sector, to have elaborate plans in place to make sure we are not firefighting, but are basically planning for this rapid urbanization that we are witnessing in our major cities across the 5 countries we work in and also wider. Thank you
very much, Eden. Very interesting indeed to hear about the free water provision requests from governments to utilities. I'm sure that puts further pressure on them. And yeah, thank you for your comments. I would now like to come to Mohammed with a couple questions. Mohammed, can you share a bit about the RAIN project in Sierra Leone with the Ministry of Water Resource and how the Water Point Data Exchange platform is helping those efforts? You kind of highlighted a bit of that already in the introduction, but would love to, if you can take a couple minutes to just build upon it a bit.
Yeah, thank you very much, Malik. The RAIN is supporting 3 projects in Sierra Leone. The first one was the mudslides, which we had in 2017 and 2018. So that project was implemented by a civil society organization. If you look at the video, I posted the video. Yes, so which we reach over 6,000 people across the affected communities. And also now the Catholic Relief Services is also implementing a piloted project, which is for the establishment of a water fund within the Freetown. And we are also partnering with TNC to really give us support into establishing a water fund that will look at the Guma Valley water coming catchment, because that catchment is really in a serious state. And as a government, we have tried, and we need to do more to really make sure that we really protect that catchment. And it's good that we had this project to really support us in doing so. So in terms of, with regards to the data exchange, as I said earlier, in 2012, we had this, the first round of water point mapping. but we did not inform the stakeholders on basically the essence of why we collect the data. We just look at the coverage that with these are the number of water points we have across the country. And it was a challenge for us to really do the second round in 2016. And the partners, that is the African Development Bank, UNICEF, World Bank, they are saying before we do this, we need to do a further analysis to really inform the stakeholders why we are doing this. Not we should just base on just the coverage, number of water points we have across the country. So it was a very big challenge for the ministry, and it was a very big challenge for the government. But we accepted because we want to do it. And this was just after the Ebola. So we collected the water point, the second round, and we don't have the know-how to really do this. So we partner with the Global Water Challenge, which they help us in doing this analysis. We dive into the data for us to really know where we should really construct a water point and where it's necessary for us to rehabilitate a water point, and what type of technology that really fits in the country. And the management issues, because we have a lot of water points, but the management issue is a very big challenge. Sustainability is a very big challenge for the sector. So this analysis really helps us to really guide in the process. And that's why we have a policy now in Sierra Leone that whosoever want to construct a water point, you need to reference the selection of the water point to the Global Water Challenge website. Because in the past, politicians and other actors just select a water point based on their own decisions, not based on water point. And we realize that in some districts, there's a area in Sierra Leone, some districts, there are water points clustered, whilst others are not. That takes us to the issue of equity. So in this, address that issues that now we should reference our water points based on the dashboard. And this dashboard will guide you where you will meet more people if you construct that water point in a particular area. Let us say you have 100 people in this community A, and you have 200 people in the community B. Instead of constructing a water point in community A to reach lesser people, it is essential, it is more effective to construct a water point in B. So this is exactly what they have helped us now as a ministry. We are moving forward, and we believe we are progressing rather than the situation where we are in the past to do water points without reaching more people, because maybe those people voted for us, or maybe those people are easy to access. That should be the change. So now we are not doing business as usual. We are doing things based on fact, based on evidence. So that's why now we have a policy. A policy now is in place in the country, instructing the Ministry of Finance to the local council that whosoever want to do a water point, want to construct a water point, or want to rehabilitate a water point, should go to the data point exchange. But we are also told and we are informed that this dashboard will only be effective if we continue to feed real data into the dashboard. But today, as a government, we are stuck because we are challenged in going further to really use the mapping officers that we have recruited, we have posted to the various districts to really collect data. They don't have the facility, they don't have the logistics now as a government for them to do this data collection. So the data GWC is currently using is just 2016, and they require us to keep on feeding data. So our biggest challenge now is, as a government, is to really continue the process by really supporting the mapping officers to continue collecting data regularly, monthly, and feed to the dashboard, which will continue giving us a correct result. So our
Thank
biggest
you,
challenge
Mohammed.
is to move forward into this. Thank you.
No, thank you very much for sharing this great insight around data collection, but the usage of the data. I think this is very important, and I think it's a challenge that is not just you know, something that Sierra Leone is facing. I think other countries are facing that as well, and yeah, it would be great to share your learnings and experiences, you know, with other governments and other countries to leverage this opportunity. I also hear that there is the challenge of continuing that collection, that commitment. And it's great to know that there is a policy in place, but I think that policy, obviously, if the resources are not there for the government to continue the work, it's challenging. Thank you for your remarks. With that, I would like to turn it over to Kelly with a couple questions on women's empowerment, particularly, and gender equality. Kelly, could you please tell us what gender-sensitive approaches, in your expert opinion, should be prioritized to alleviate inequalities in access to WASH? If you can share maybe like examples of that in CARE's work with RAIN, that would be great.
Sure. And I have like just 2 minutes or so.
2 minutes, that would be fantastic.
Okay.
If you need a little more time, we should be okay. After you, I will go to Fred, and then we'll switch to the audience Q&A.
Okay. So within CARE's programming, and specifically within the work we've done with RAIN, we prioritize gender consultations like before a program starts, looking at the design of a program, maybe the timing of meetings, looking at the design of infrastructure, for example, in some of our older projects with RAIN in Mozambique and Zimbabwe. But we also want to make sure that while a program is happening, there's ongoing feedback and an accountability mechanism during our implementation. So we're getting feedback from women, we're getting feedback from men, we're really like hearing what people's experiences are with the program so that we can adapt and so that we can improve it as we go. And it's also really important not just to include women, you know, but also make sure that we're including men. So for example, if a program is very explicitly talking about women's empowerment or involving women or using the word gender, depending on how that's sort of translated in the local language or depending on how it's presented to a population or community, it might actually discourage the involvement of men and boys in a project. Which, you know, in order to have gender equality, we want the involvement of everybody, like not just women. So we think that's a really important piece to include, you know, because in order for women to meaningfully engage and to really be able to express themselves and communicate their needs, and whether it has to do with farmland or whether it has to do with menstruation, you know, we want the voices of women to be heard and understood by traditional leaders or by men within the community. And while I have the floor, I just wanted to say that I really agree with Dr. Gitahi's point on co-creation, like with government, not just with women, which is what I just talked about, but with government, and then looking at engaging local government officials. And it's been so important for our water smart agriculture programs with RAIN and in Mali and Malawi and Ghana. You know, we were able to reach thousands of farmers through government replication without any contribution from CARE program funds. So, you know, involving these local government and extension agents like really enabled us to scale up the program and, you know, include the government's priorities and the government's investments and their ideas in what we were doing and how we were doing it so that it can continue once the program ends. So I'll stop there because I don't want to.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Great insight. I heard obviously women empowerment, but also engaging men in the process is key. Co-creation with government is critical, as Dr. Gitinji noted also earlier. Maybe I have a quick follow-up question for you. what are the biggest opportunities for the private sector, particularly to advance gender equality through WASH in Africa? Are you?
Sorry, there was a glitch about muting and unmuting. So the biggest opportunities. So honestly, you know, when we talk to women, when we listen to women, you know, they want to be involved, but maybe their confidence isn't there, or their skills aren't there. And so, you know, thinking about the skills that the private sector has in terms of marketing, of financial literacy, budgeting, planning, there's so much experience from the private sector that it can help women feel more confident and feel empowered to meaningfully participate in the WASH sector. And then, of course, looking at marketing and making sure that advertisements and things like that for soap or for water products like aren't only directed at women, and that we're really trying, you know, that we're not reinforcing gender roles and gender norms, and that we're trying to say, hey, like men and boys, like wash the baby's hands as well, you know, things like that. And then also, I think private sector, because it has such a strong presence and because it has money and influence, like even just mentioning and sort of pushing government to say, hey, you know, why don't you include some more women in your staff? Why don't you employ more women at your district level? It really can make such a big difference in how successful and sustainable a WASH program is when more women are involved, either in the private sector or in the public sector.
Thank you so much for these great insights, Kelly. Appreciate it. Now I would like to turn to Fred at the Nature Conservancy. Fred, thank you for holding. Can you tell us about a bit more? I think most people here probably know a bit about the Water Fund, but would love to hear from a representative from the Nature Conservancy to give us a bit of an overview of the Water Fund model that you implement and how it helps to integrate water resource management. And maybe I'm going to throw another one at you. That way you can just address both at the same time before we move to the Q&A. In your experience with water funds established today across the world, and particularly Africa, what are the best practices and approaches that you found for bringing stakeholders together behind one common water security goal for community WASH, you know, ecosystem, biodiversity protection, etc.? And what barriers have you faced in that process? Thank you so much, Fred. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Malik, and everybody. If you allow me, I would like to start from the speech by Mr. Bruno. Because one of the things he actually was able to explain is that water funds have actually become a nice, reliable tool for climate adaptation and for getting rural communities needed to have an alternative and a decent life despite climate changing. Like I told you, we started this in Nairobi back in 2012. Things in Nairobi were really bad. The city had 30% water shortage deficit every day. That would impact 60% of the whole population in the city of Nairobi. And then up in the watershed where up there, we call it the Tana River, where the water comes from, farmers were busy expanding their farms, adopting more irrigated agriculture to provide food both for themselves and for the markets, including export like green beans. So it was really time to act and do things differently. So part of what we really started with, and we've done this for Nairobi, we've done this for Cape Town now, was to put in some good science and establish business cases. For Nairobi, to give you an example, we were able to prove that if we invest up in the watershed, we can, for every $1 we invest there, we will prevent having to spend $2 downstream in terms of trying to clean the water or correct the mess that's created up there. So there was a strong business case. We involved a bit of economics. And I think just to answer part of your other question, this is really what we were able to sell to corporates. This is what we were able to sell to governments. And for both Kenya and Cape Town, which is where we started this work, we actually got buy-in to a level of being endorsed as a priority for the government, which was significant for a tour Like I said before, from 2000, the Nature Conservancy and Coca-Cola bottling companies in Latin America had helped develop that provides a kind of a modified payment for ecosystem service, where those who live downstream provide resources that support those who live upstream to implement conservation and make sure that they can do the work that's needed to be successful. And then a water fund becomes a long-term mechanism for financing and governance. So they're there in the long term to make sure that they do this. So I'll give you a few examples, like for example, in Cape Town. The city of Cape Town is, of course, working. You may know the Coca-Cola headquarters has people there. We are supervised by Dorcas, and we have a number of other people who we're working close with. And part of that is working together to also tap on the corporate knowledge that your team has, and work with Peninsula Beverage and others. And we developed a water fund there that is actually helping remove invasive species in the water sources for Cape Town. And by removing invasive species like pine and eucalyptus, we are encouraging growth of very endemic plant species that exist nowhere else in the world. 70% of the species there don't exist anywhere else in the world. We are working with local communities. We have created 260 green jobs, most of them for women. And we are helping save annually for just that watershed, to give you an example, 6.5 billion liters of water annually. And that is equivalent to 2 months of additional water supply for the city of Cape Town. So these are solutions that we can look at and that are easy to replicate and that have huge impact in terms of water supply and economies. In the town where we started, we are about 5 years into implementation. We've actually fixed over at least 28,000 farms. These are farm families, over 100,000 people engaged in just that activity. We are saving 55 million liters for Nairobi every day as we speak. That's close to 10%. And the impact is actually felt when it is dry. Because in between the seasons, when it's dry, the rivers drain and they are very minimal. And that's when we really create impact, because the rationing is not as bad. People can go about their own business and be successful. We continue to do this, and we continue to listen to other challenges. We're also bringing down the amount of sediments in the rivers, like I said, because that impacts directly the business by the water utility company. Just to give you two quick items to your other question is, we do believe that by implementing this, first of all, we were able to talk to Coca-Cola even for Nairobi. Lane gave us some seed capital to get started, and just working with communities and making sure that we had a product that was solid and we could show impact is what helped us endear with government. We're also able to attract other corporates in manufacturing and in agriculture. And those have been part and parcel of our success since then. And just to let you know is that I've put a map there because right now the demand is growing. We started with 2. I think right now the current number is about 10 of various stages of development. And those are not the only urban centers and communities that want a water fund. There's many more, but of course we can only progress depending on resources and how they are. So what I really want to just quickly say is that when we look at moving forward, we would really want to leverage on our partnership with a company like Coca-Cola that has a strong brand presence. And I mean, like, it's really good. If we could use the brand power of Coca-Cola so that we are able to bring others to the table. And then we can grow a bigger machinery for addressing some of these challenges wherever they are, because the impact is huge. We're impacting, if you look at the people who get water downstream, the city of Nairobi is 4 million people. If we can impact those people even in a small way, the numbers are big. Cape Town, the same, is 3 million people. And then upstream, they are working with the communities and getting their lives better off would be very successful, very, very great. So just to answer your last question on challenges, of course, there's been challenges and I may not talk a lot about them, but let me give you an example of 2. In the beginning, in all the places we go to, there's always an apprehension allowed, is the water fund coming to occupy our space? And we take time, and Mohammed is the best example where government really embraced, because government realized they were collecting data that wasn't getting analyzed. If the government can provide data, then we can design a water fund like we've done for Freetown that's really watertight, that if implemented can really save the source of water. So getting that collaboration and removing that apprehension is one thing that I'd like to mention. And of course, the other thing is people get to understand what needs to be done but not everybody understands the urgency. This work is priority, but it's also urgent. I think it's good to go in there and do some bit of work. And then also it takes a bit of time to invest in monitoring. I'll stop there.
Thank you.
It takes a bit of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Fred, for these great insights on the water fund model that the Nature Conservancy has pioneered and that has demonstrated to be extremely effective in addressing water security issues. Thank you. Appreciate you. Now, I would like to say a big thank you to all of you for sharing your valuable expert insights. We've heard great recommendations and lessons already from diverse lenses: government engagement, women empowerment, nature-based solution, as Fred just highlighted, integrated water resource management, data usage, urbanization being critical, all to mobilize collective resources to achieve water security and access to wash for all. Now, I would like to switch to the panel audience questions, if that's okay with everyone. And I think we've received a first question from WaterAid from Kamiso Nyanga, who asks all panelists, how can we prioritize hygiene in various collaborations in the work that everyone does? And maybe I can come back to you, Dr. Gitinji, to start. Over to you.
I think mute, yes, it's a mute issue. So I would say that hygiene is about behavior change. And what we've done often as an organization is to work with communities for communities to own. When you do community empowerment and engagement, that's how you achieve hygiene, positive behavior. In the past, we've actually worked with schools through a program called Sanitation Education for schools. Now, in this particular program, we educated children on hygiene, and then we expected that transformation to transform their families, and it was extremely successful. It was called Personal Sanitation and Hygiene Education, which went out across the world. So I would say behavior change, community engagement, and community health workers and schools are a critical tool to achieving behavior change on hygiene.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gitinji. Fred or Kelly, anything that you'd like to share on this? Maybe I'll go to Fred first, or Kelly. Kelly, go ahead. Please, over to you. It looks like you muted. Let me make sure that you are not.
Sorry, I think when we unmute and then you unmute at the same time. I just want to say, in terms of COVID, and obviously we've seen, yes, there are outbreaks of cholera, there's Ebola, all this stuff. I think one thing that, governments and, WASH NGOs need to keep in mind is, hand washing prevents disease. Hand washing improves health. It's not just about COVID. It's not just about cholera right now. It's not just about Ebola, in this community. We really need to maybe change our messaging and change how we talk about it, or even take advantage of COVID, for example, and not say, wash your hands because of COVID, wash your hands to prevent it. And, but really start talking, changing the dialogue about how hand washing is something that we all did hand washing before it was cool, but like now that it's cool, it's like everyone's doing it, but then it's not going to be cool next month anymore. And it needs to be like changing the dialogue and thinking more innovatively about how we're doing that messaging.
Thank you for that. Fred, over to you. Anything you'd like to share here? Oh, I think the same thing, muted. Okay, there we go.
Thank you very much. I was too fast. So my colleagues have really explained it, but because we actually largely concentrate because of our conservation nature on the water sources, on the forest and the farmlands. What we've seen, particularly when we work with institutions, keeping toilet facilities for boys and girls becomes an important thing. So whether we're able to rehabilitate some of them, make sure they have lockable doors, particularly for girls, otherwise kids who are quickly turning to bushes and so on, which is not light. We do believe though, that is not enough. So we're collaborating like here in Nairobi with people like WhatsApp and AMLEF and others to work on WASH. And as a policy as we go across Africa, like Mohammed said, Catholic Relief Services runs a whole WASH program alongside our watershed conservation, Water for People in Blantyre, Malawi, and we're doing this in virtually all the places we go. So we are connecting both upslope and downslope as a minimum to get a 50-50 match, because WASH is important, but also getting water supplied that's clean and adequate is also important. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fred. Eden, over to you. Anything that you'd like to highlight on this point?
Yes, thank you very much. I think for us, hygiene is one of the areas that has been very exposed after the COVID-19 pandemic. And what we have observed as WhatsApp is the structure, mandates, and coordination mechanisms between institutions, specifically in Kenya, is quite weak. And as you know, Kenya is a highly decentralized sector in terms of water sanitation and hygiene. So there is specifically for the hygiene and sanitation sector, there's an institutional overlap and lack of clarity in mandates, duplication of roles, lapse of service provision. So say between the line ministries of health and the line ministry of water and sanitation, we have seen quite usually we've seen evidence and significant struggles in government bodies responding and rallying support from stakeholders to respond to hygiene and behavior change programs, and also just specifically hygiene programs. So I think for hygiene, this shows us that governments at both national and local levels, so specifically for Kenya, would need to figure out a sustainable institutional coordination, and more importantly, how WASH institutions like water service providers can effectively and efficiently work together to incorporate hygiene and mainstream hygiene within all their services and their programming.
Thank you so much.
Over to you.
Thank you very much. I am being told that we are running out of time, although I would love to stay on and continue this discussion and hearing all of your great insights and recommendations from implementing these programs on the ground. If it's okay with everyone, I would suggest that you definitely continue to use the WUVA platform. If there are particular questions that you would like to ask our panelists or speakers, feel free to direct message them. You have that feature there. But I think we need to move on to the next item so that we're not holding everyone past the time that we have dedicated. We know everyone has busy schedule, and we are so appreciative of the time that you're spending here with us today. So once again, please join me in thanking our panelists for their participation and valuable expertise shared here today. We greatly appreciated the various perspectives that you've shared to accelerate WASH delivery and increase water security on the continent. Thank you so much. This concludes the panel discussion. I would now like to invite Ms. Patricia Obozua, Vice President, Public Affairs, Communications and Sustainability for Africa at the Coca-Cola Company, to provide closing remarks. Patricia is based in Lagos, Nigeria, and has joined the Coca-Cola Company in 2020. In her role, she leads a team that oversees government affairs, thought leadership, media relations, corporate communications, and sustainability for the company across Africa. Patricia, please, the floor is yours.
Well, thanks, Malik, for the introduction, and thanks to everyone who's spoken or participated at the last panel. Thank you for providing your expert perspectives on rain as a continent-wide and proven case study, which has provided actionable recommendations on approaches, on models, on programs that can speed up and scale up affordable and sustainable WASH access to meet SDG 6. Now, SDG 6 targets are very ambitious. And to achieve these, it would require a lot of focus, a great deal of focus, and sustained resourcing. In Dr. Paul Orengo's words, Africa would need to leapfrog in order not to be left behind, especially in a COVID and post-COVID-19 environment, and to address social inequality and build climate resilient systems. So some points, in summary, some points we agree on across the panel and the different speakers. And the first one is that strategic partnerships and coalitions are critical. And this could be public-private partnerships where stakeholders come together and protect natural ecosystems and increase water security, as seen in our collaboration with USAID on the Water Development Alliance, or in the Water Funds model that we've supported in Kenya, in South Africa, and in Sierra Leone under the RAIN program, or it could be private-private partnerships. A second point that we agree on is that integrated water resource management and a whole system approach must be accelerated at all levels to address climate change, to address population growth, and to reduce the stress on food production, water supply, and sanitation services. Again, it would require a multi-sectoral approach. It would require regional cooperation, and it would require rigorous target setting, monitoring, reporting, and progress review. A third point that we agree on is that supporting mandated service providers and government commitments to strengthen domestic wash capability is urgent. If this will enable governments to be more engaged, to build comprehensive policies that are aligned to their national priorities and provide full ownership, transparency, and sustainability. A fourth point is that there's a huge opportunity to leverage private sector expertise to build wash capability through skills and knowledge transfer, especially in urban utilities that are facing rapidly growing populations and accelerating climate impacts. And the last point to emphasize is, as Kelly from CARE has emphasized, addressing the gender gap and focusing on the needs of women would be critical to achieve SDG 6. With women at the center of community programs and efforts, we can promote equity and promote dignity. We can also increase opportunities for empowerment. And we can enhance the critical role that women play in community resilience and in economic development. Now, going forward, the Coca-Cola system in Africa is committed to collaborating on these solutions for shared value creation. And we're doing this through integrated approaches, such as emphasizing partnerships with urban and peri-urban utilities to help increase capacity to better serve Africa's expanding urban environments. We're also accelerating integrated water resources management efforts. We will be, and we are definitely committed to approaches that enhance source protection for priority watersheds, watersheds that serve the drinking water needs of millions of African people. Addressing the gender gap and focusing on the needs of women who play a critical role in community resilience and are uniquely empowered by wash access. We're also committing to approaches such as improving the collection, accessibility, sharing, and use of data to monitor wash services, improve performance, planning, and decision-making. We're offering the Coca-Cola system or the Coca-Cola ecosystem private sector expertise to ministries of water utilities and wash sector. We will also be committing to supporting civil society and communities to help build resilience to water related climate change impacts and water-related climate change impacts. Now, we thank the Coca-Cola Foundation and each and every one of you for your ongoing partnership and commitment to RAIN. In particular, we thank Usaid for being on this decade-long journey with us in numerous countries, serving as a vital technical thought and co-finance partner. So thanks for your partnership and thanks for participating in this program and in today's event.
Thank you so much, Patricia, for your remarks and for guiding us through our collective conclusions here today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This closes our roundtable for today, but before everyone leaves, let's please take a minute to see the illustration by our scribe artist, Pete, on the screen, please. Fantastic. You can leave that on the screen if you'd like. I'm just gonna highlight two quick things before we disconnect. Feel free, as I said, to continue using the WUVA platform to network, explore the work of other organizations and drive lessons learned. You're able to engage and direct message participants there. You can see videos and other documents that have been uploaded to the booth. And if you have not already done so, I definitely encourage you to visit partner booth. These booths include partners who have been part of the RAIN journey throughout the years. And of course, if there is any questions that you might have for the organizers, please direct messages through the community page. Thank you again to all who contributed to this event, and in particular, our implementing partners, the Coca-Cola Foundation, the Coca-Cola Company and its system of bottlers for their continued commitment to achieving sustainable wash for communities in Africa. A special thank you also to our GETF, GWC, and USWP teams for all the preparation for making this all possible today. Thank you all. Take good care, stay healthy, and all the best. Thank you so much.